My research is in the area of social entrepreneurship. That's a kind of broad area that I look at. But more generally, I'm interested in organizations that balance social and economic demands simultaneously. So it's a whole range of organizations that do that. So I look at that in the context of social responsibility, for instance. So usually larger corporations. I look at community-based organizations or family enterprises. So I have some research on that. So you balance kind of economic demands and family requirements, et cetera. And then the social entrepreneurship, that's where I've done most of my work. And social entrepreneurship is very interesting because it's this area where we explicitly talk about the social and economic demands, and we prioritize the social demands, right? So people say, okay, what is social entrepreneurship if you've never heard the term, right? So there are a lot of definitions, and the way I like to look at it, while all organizations are interested to some extent in creating social value and economic value, the difference with social enterprises is that they prioritize the social value creation, right? And they do it in a very specific way. So let's take again a general example. If we take traditional entrepreneurship, so entrepreneurs are putting in a certain amount of effort, resources, etc., and they're creating a value for society. So they're creating value up to a certain point. And the goal in very traditional commercial entrepreneurship is to capture as much value as you can for the firm, shareholders, managers, right? So as much of the value you've created, you capture, you put that back into the organization. And then if there's social value that's created for the society, that's wonderful, it goes out. And then again, so everyone's happy. In social entrepreneurship, the goal is really to create value, but most of the value that you create goes out to society, right? So you capture back to what you capture back into the organization what you need for the sustenance of the organization, for the managers, for the people who again work in the organization, so certain stakeholders, but most of the value goes out to the community, most of the value goes out to the people who the social enterprise is trying to impact, right? So I think that's one way we can look at social entrepreneurship. And just to make that a little concrete, so one of the most famous examples of a social enterprise, one of the better known examples, is the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, founded by Muhammad Yunus, who's a Nobel Prize winner. And again, this is a classic case of a social enterprise, right? So they're using a kind of business principle to for instance, make capital available to rural entrepreneurs, so mostly women in this case. And what's different about the Grameen Bank is that they make loans to people who don't have collateral for the most part, right? So they haven't had too many assets, etc. And in return, they have a fairly high interest rate, let's say, compared to U.S., Western Europe, etc. But what's different about what they're doing is that before the Grameen Bank, the people who are making loans to these populations were, let's say, village money lenders. And village money lenders, they were charging, I don't know, 200% a year, 100% a year. So what they did is they reduce that to, again, what we would still consider fairly high levels, so let's say 20, 30, sometimes more percent per year on an annual basis for a loan, but they didn't charge 100%, they didn't charge 50%, they didn't charge 80%, right? So relative to the options these entrepreneurs had before, they have a much better deal. They've been able to create businesses. There's been an impact, right? So that's kind of one example of that value creation, value capture, a dynamic that we talk about in social entrepreneurship.